People are inherently complex beings, which often forces us to make simplifying assumptions while dealing with each other, or for that matter, even to build any useful models to better understand human behavior. There are just too many variables, and they are difficult to comprehend or process. Shortage of time, often the pain point of real-life decisions, makes our job even harder. What do we end up with? We stereotype based on gender, race, and religion. We identify common attributes to profile criminals. We quantify and create various rules of society, sometimes for reasons of health, some to maintain order, and often for our perceptions of morality. Traditional economic theory assumes that people have good access to information and can process it perfectly. It believes that humans are inherently rational, that they can always execute their plan, and that they only care for personal gain. Such a simplified framework has helped economists understand and solve some very important problems, be it gains of efficiency or the dynamics of supply, demand, and pricing. However, sometimes this model just doesn't work.
Share prices continued to tumble.
Lehman Brothers was forced to declare itself bankrupt.
Everybody thought they could get rich quick. Everybody across from retail investor to investment bank.
How is it possible, I ask myself, that ordinary people who are courteous and decent in everyday life can act callously, inhumanely, without any limitations of conscience?
Wait, who is this guy? This is Richard Thaler, a professor from the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, whose pioneering work in the field of behavioral economics has been recognized by the Nobel Prize Committee this year. But what does he actually do? And what is he doing with Selena Gomez? Well, this is a scene from The Big Short, in my opinion, one of the most insightful and unconventional movies on Wall Street. Based on a bestseller by Michael Lewis, The Big Short is the story of how a handful of guys made a ton of money betting against the housing market in 2008, during the worst global financial downturn in recent history. Richard Thaler stars in this movie to explain how human behavior played an important role in bringing down the financial system.
Now, this is a classic error. In basketball, it's called the hot hand fallacy. A player makes a bunch of shots in a row. People are sure they're going to make the next one. People think whatever's happening now is going to continue to happen into the future. During the real estate boom, markets were going up, and people thought they would never go down.
Richard is considered by many as the father of behavioral economics, which blends the insights of psychology with economics to understand the decision-making process of individuals and institutions. This new age branch of study challenges some of our most basic assumptions and theories about human behavior. He joins the list of distinguished awardees such as Gary Becker, who won the Nobel Prize in 1992, and whose work extended economic theory to other aspects previously excluded, such as sociology, demography, and criminology. Another celebrated proponent has been Daniel Kahneman, the winner in 2002, and who integrated economic analysis with cognitive psychology, highlighting the role of mental shortcuts or heuristics while taking decisions. So what has Thaler essentially shown? After much research and experimentation, it has been established that man is not entirely a rational being and is often driven by shortcuts, instincts, and emotions. Thaler came up with 3 human traits which systematically affect individual decisions as well as market outcomes, choosing to call them limited rationality, lack of self-control, and social preferences. Limited rationality is where people create simple thumb rules to make economic decisions. This is because in most cases it is very difficult for people to consider each alternative along with their long-term consequences. To elaborate on limited rationality, Thaler developed the theory of mental accounting, which is the tendency of people to separate their money into different mental accounts based on the source of money, its purpose, and such. For instance, he figured that people often have a fund set aside for a vacation or a new home while still carrying substantial credit card debt. The money in the special hypothetical fund is treated differently from the money that the same person is using to pay his or her debt. Don't you create separate mental accounts for your gym membership, your rent, or for going to the movies? Strangely, you don't really want to move the money allocated in one account to the other, even though no one can really stop you from doing so. This is also why you don't feel very guilty when you take a gym membership but don't end up going, as that loss is already accounted for in advance. This is termed as limited rationality. In another experiment, Thaler proposed that humans tend to give into short-term temptations, which he identified as lack of self-control. This is the reason why people often fail at long-term plans to save money, exercise, and living healthy. This is why it is so hard to keep those New Year resolutions. But wait, Thaler also came up with some solutions, the most famous of which is called the nudge theory. Let Dr. Thaler describe it himself.
A nudge is some small feature of the environment that attracts our attention and alters our behavior.
These small, harmless nudges, he argues, are perhaps better at improving behaviors in comparison to complicated rules and laws, which are time-consuming, potentially expensive, and certainly difficult to enforce. For example, a nudge can be used by an electric utility company to encourage customers to reduce their energy use.
I'm told how much my neighbors are spending, and if I see I'm out of line, I'll say, well, maybe I ought to cut down.
Similarly, nudges can ensure that people opt in for pension schemes and save money for their retirement. They are simple, cheap, easy to implement, and effective. Lastly, Richard says that social preferences, that is, a sense of fairness, is a pretty powerful force behind human behavior. Thaler and his colleagues devised an experimental tool they call the dictator game to measure attitudes towards fairness in different groups of people around the world. He got together a group of students and asked each one of them to share $20 with an anonymous classmate. The students were given the option to either split the amount equally or keep $18 while giving the remaining $2 to the other student. Now, standard economics would predict that a rational student would choose the second option, especially since the anonymity ensures that there is no real threat of reputation. Surprisingly, a majority of the students who took part in the experiment chose to share the money equally. The results of the dictator game shows that people value fairness in their economic lives, thus forming the basis of Richard Thaler's theory of social preferences. So, Dr. Thaler has established a new framework to understand human behavior and suggested potential mechanisms to influence it in a positive direction, thus creating the new and rapidly expanding field of behavioral economics. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please comment and subscribe to Transfin for receiving rich original news content from the world of business, finance, technology, and our economy. Have a great day.